Okay, so I just start. My name is Mario. Um, we just recently had a client project where we had to design and build some kind of REST API based architecture with AngularJS frontend. I did that together with Chris, and in that design process, we thought we could extract some smaller topics to make out of that two lightning talks today. So Chris will tell you about another topic out of the REST API stuff later on. So what are we doing? We are Codastic. We're doing full stack web application development. So we're both web developers. And now I just go with the talk. So I want to tell you something about batch API design. So first of all, you have kind of some needs when you design a REST API. What makes a good REST API? Well, you want to have it clean, right? But what does that mean? You have to define your models, your resources. You have to map them to URIs. And you should do that in a well-defined and separated manner. That means you don't want to couple your resource definitions together because you want to separate them to make a clean URI design on top of that. And this also means like if you have fine-grained URI definitions, you can address and make CRUD operations on those resources. And this makes your API more expressive, I would say. So you can do more operations more effectively on the objects you defined if you have more URIs to address them. On the other hand, if you want to stick a web application on top of it, you have other needs. For example, you want fast a responsive app, you want fast responses to user input, you want a fast boot up of your application. And you often have, especially in boot up time, you need a lot of data in first place before you can show anything in the app. And this means like this contradicts a little bit to this you want fine-grained resource definitions, because this means you have to do a lot of requests in the first place to get the data you need. And this means you have to solve that problem, this trade-off here. But it's not really a trade-off because there's an easy solution, so we choose that. It's a batch API. You want to put all your requests that you want to send to the REST API together into one HTTP request, send that over to the backend, and then let the backend handle them in parallel until it's finished, and send it back then afterwards. How could such an architecture look like? I would say it's a batch proxy. It's a service that you put right in the middle of those two things. Yeah. And then you can have this case that the front end just sends one HTTP request, can smooth or smudge those paths, resources it wants to fetch all together into one request, and let just the batch API handle it for you. So the batch API multiplexes the requests into multiple ones and send them to the REST API. It's quite an easy concept, but it's really clean, and it has a few nice properties. First of all, it's separation of concerns. So this is one of the most basic principles in software engineering. You have a nice service-oriented architecture in this way, because you can see the REST API as a service and the batch API as a service, and the front end just uses them and you couple them together. You have a good scalability because you can scale the REST API individually to the batch API, however you need it. This service-oriented architecture also has a good reusability because the batch API service doesn't need to know anything about the design inside of the REST API. So it's just a multiplexing service, and you can reuse it with other projects. You can still have a caching layer between the REST API backend and the batch API. So in between the multiple HTTP part on the left side, you can just put an HTTP frontend cache in between. Between the frontend and the batch API, it's not so easy because you can only cache this request if it only contains get methods. If it contains one single modifying request, you can't cache it anymore. And so performance-wise, it's a benefit because the front end just has to, for example, for boot up, just has to send one request to the backend. How did we design the request and the response? So this is now an easy example where we want to fetch a user object and its friends, and we just send to some URL path where the batch API is this JSON body. So you could also specify here that you want to have a post request with, and then the body object would be in that JSON body too. And the response then would look like this. Just for convenience, we repeat the request object, and it's just a list of all the responses. They contain the header and the body and the status code. For this client project, we implemented already such a Express.js-based controller with a batch API, and I extracted that, and now you can use it in this way. You just have to require this batch proxy. You need, for Express version 4, you need the body parser, and then you have here a configuration part where you need to set the port under which the app is reachable, because in this example, it just requests via localhost on this port, and that's all. And you can hang it in under the path you want. So this batch proxy function just returns a controller function. This is now the example for an existing Express app where you have the batch API in the same process as the other REST controllers. But you can also have a standalone Express app where you just let this Express app run on any server you want, configure another host where the REST API is. And this is nice because here comes the SOA part really in, because this other host, this REST API, doesn't even have to be developed in Express or in JavaScript. It can be just any technology. This batch proxy controller is available on GitHub if you want to have a look at it. I just put it together today, so it's not fully tested, but it already worked in a customer project. Yeah, it's spontaneous, right? And now the nice part is that you can have also a nice API for the front-end developer who is using that batch API. And at the customer project, we have a service component inside Angular, which couple which couples together all the communication with the API. So it's not exactly this example. I put together this example on top of jQuery. So you just would define a batch object with the URL to the batch API, and then you could have an additional option where you hang this batch object in to all your Ajax calls, and then they will be postponed until you call batch commit, and batch commit then would send them to the batch API. And the nice thing is that the serialization part and deserialization part of this batch API requests and responses can be integrated into this jQuery plugin. So the developer doesn't need to know about that. Okay, as last I can say that this worked really great for us. We didn't integrate a lot of complexity into the project, but the performance was great. And as I said, we can use both libraries in other projects again. So I think it's quite a nice approach.
It wasn't clear if this batch API is proxying like the primitive resources from the other APIs in back.
So it's just proxying the requests you send to the REST API.
Yeah, I mean, besides the aggregates, which is clear.
Yeah.
Like, give me these and that, which you post to batch API, like a simple one resource call is
yeah.
You proxy it, or you just hit the primitive API?
Yeah, we just hit the other API then with another request. Yeah, so this library just uses node request for doing then the HTTP calls to the REST API.
I also have another question. Isn't it posting kind of violating the HTTP meaning of you shouldn't be using posting?
Yeah, in a sense it does. Yeah, you're right. But I think it's okay in this case because it's fully integrated into one single component. And if you have together this backend batch API service and the front-end library, then while you're developing, you're never violating it in your code. It's just inside the library. Yeah, I mean, you could argue about that. Yeah.
I was thinking about like creating a mapping between, get complex resource batch API so you can.
Yeah, that would be the other approach. That would lead like to some kind of remote procedure calls, where you would have another API on top of REST and would define some specialized methods on top of that. That's possible totally, but the nice thing about this one is that you can easily reuse it and plug it into any project you have. I think at the end it's a decision on how big your project is and how fast you want to develop. Yeah.
One additional question regarding the post. Why have you decided to use post and not using get and query parameters? I mean, in the example you showed us,
yeah.
You're doing basically only gets, and maybe you could have one get batch API where you append some queries, get parameters or a list of getters.
In this case, you could optimize it. If you just have gets inside of this request, you could optimize it to use a get request. That would be possible. But the problem is that with query parameters, you always have an easily reachable limit length. So the limit length of an URI is maybe 1000K or something.
4K.
Yeah, and 1000 bytes or so. But
if the response would be cached by
Yeah, I mean,
layer
that would be something that the front-end lib could decide for you. Whether it's possible to do a GET request or to use a POST request.
A question on timing. The slowest response will determine the batch response.
Exactly.
Time.
Yeah.
How do you relate this to HTTP2?
That's a good question. I'm not deeply into HTTP2. Maybe you can give info. Yeah. I mean, I know that there are.
Here is speedy.
Yeah.
Which already includes asynchronous requests concurrently over the same connection, which basically solves.
But how does it relate to AJAX calls?
Well, you just send several gets or posts or whatever in parallel, which will be packed by the speedy protocol on HTTP level. So your batching is somewhat like double packaging and double buffering.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you use until you have what's perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
it will be soon.
yeah, but we needed a solution that works now. And, yeah.
So no plans right now
No.
for changing, improving, or whatever. So, thank you very much.